Come look at the freaks, the pygmies and geeks. Come examine these aberrations, their malformations, grotesque receipts, only pennies for peaks. Come look at the freaks.
Well, that, of course, is the opening number for Sideshow. Come look at the freaks. And that chorus, that opening chorus, was among, I would say, the first 10 songs we wrote for the show. It came fairly early in the process. We mostly start with the lyric, and I remember bringing that to Henry, and he sat down as he does and started playing it, and it was pretty magical.
Well, your lyrics inspire me, so you put them in front of me, and there it is. They come to life in my mind. Yeah.
And there are some changes from the original lyric, actually, in this process, which we started 22 years ago, has been continual. We're back at it again with this revisal that is currently playing on Broadway, and we have made tweaks throughout to the songs that already existed.
Tweaks to the freaks.
Tweaks to the freaks. I think there's only one song in the score that I didn't make any lyric changes in. One of the questions we had when we first met about this project, and one of my concerns musically, was I didn't want to be stuck in the 30s musically. That's where the show is set. So we talked about that their onstage numbers, when they're performing in vaudeville, would have a 30s feel, but the rest of the show would have a different feel and really more contemporary.
And actually, out of the nowness of the fact that they were living in whatever time they were in, and having the kinds of feelings that everybody has at different times, which are not necessarily immediately colored by the time and place, but more by the emotions and the needs and the wants of a character.
Well, the first song we ever wrote together, because Sideshow was our first project, we've written 3 other musicals since then, but was a song meant to be in performance on a vaudeville stage, and it's called Stuck With You. And the conceit is that the Hilton sisters' father had a glue factory, and 2 suitors come to woo them, and the 4 of them get stuck together. We didn't use it in the original production, but now it's back.
So I'll show you a little of it. I warned you about my circumstances, how old romances fell through. Dad's business caused my love life to be fractured. He manufactured strong glue. But you persisted anyway, and now it seems you're here to stay. Dad's product has made 1 where there were 2, and now I'm stuck with you. Oh yes, I'm stuck with you. Guess there are worse things to be. 'Cause even though we can't be separated, dissociated, or isolated, at least you're also stuck with me.
A song that was a real challenge for me anyway was Tunnel of Love, which is no longer in the show, although we now have repurposed the music. But Manny Eisenberg, the producer of the original production, really strongly felt that we had to explore how the Hilton twins had sex. And I was, for a couple of months, I was just like, how the hell am I gonna do that? Where can this possibly happen, something like this, and be musical? And then I just happened to think of the Tunnel of Love. I think there was a Bruce Springsteen album called that we had, and I think maybe that's where I got the idea, but it seemed like so right for the milieu that they were in, and it was a place where they it would be in the dark, and they could all be together, but have privacy. And so once the idea happened, I think writing it was fairly quick. I think, well, it was quite a long number, so I guess it did take a while, but it was getting the idea.
Your first sentence was, "Let me take you to the tunnel of love."
Right.
And that immediately suggested. And it kind of wrote itself up to a point, and then there were interior scenes, and those I took more time in figuring out. But it kind of suggested, the music suggested itself pretty fast. Because again, it was another Mysterioso kind of thing. Something, a suggestive situation that then started to flower and develop.
Mysterious, and yet it rocked. I loved that, about it. And when we started working on this revisal with Bill Condon, we ultimately worked through the whole show, and there just wasn't a place in Act 2 for Tunnel of Love because of some plot changes we had made. So we cut the song completely in La Jolla. We've done 2 previous productions of this version now, first at the La Jolla Playhouse and then at the Kennedy Center, and we cut it completely. Then going to the Kennedy Center, Bill had this idea of using the music, and we did that there, and it worked okay, but I was not completely satisfied with the lyrics that we used, and so we ended up rewriting it pretty extensively for the Broadway production.
Who's that guy I see on every front page? Looks like he's beaming with pride. All too soon he'll take his place on the stage, posing right next to his bride. Beginning a life that he'd rather share with someone who no one can know. Instead he'll be half of a curious pair, part of this great wedding show. Daisy, I can feel that you want to share love with me. Have this tangled knot be untied. That's Terry. Now it's up to you to get Violet to agree. You should be free from her side. Daisy, I can't stop thinking about Terry's plan. Maybe we should do what he said. Terry has lied before Violet. How can you trust her now? What if we're being misled? Terry wouldn't lie about something like this. Only wants what is best for us both. But he loves me from who I am. Watch me with all of his heart. Terry will tear us apart. Terry loves me, wants me all to himself. The way you are, buddy. We all could be happy at last. And it goes on. I have empathy for them, and I become them. When we're writing together, I become Daisy. I become Violet. I become Effie. It's in me. I'm basically a quiet guy in real life, I think, most of the time.
Most of the time.
But writing for characters is something I love to do because I think they need to break out and express themselves. And I feel a lot of emotion. I used to fight with my mother all the time growing up, so there was a lot of going on. And also the pathetic qualities too.
The 6 principal characters in Sideshow, 5 of them are based on real people. The one who isn't, and that we created from raw cloth, is Jake, the Cannibal King, who is the caretaker of the twins in the sideshow and is secretly in love with Violet. And there were a few reasons we wanted to create that character. Well, for one thing, I was such a fan of Dreamgirls, and Henry's a nice Jewish boy from Westchester, but he has a black diva inside of him. How else could he have written, and I'm telling you I'm not going, and the whole score of Dreamgirls. And I really wanted to be able to work with that side of his musical personality. Also, because Sideshow is about what it means to be different in our culture, race seemed to be an important part of that. And so we did create the character of Jake, who is African American. And Henry's going to sing some of his big Act 2 number where he confesses to Violet that he's loved her all these years.
Yeah. He's kept it to himself all this time, but now he can't keep it to himself anymore. You should be loved by someone who knows you, wants you to blossom, always is true. You should be cherished like the first sign of springtime. You should be loved. You should be loved with constant devotion, heart-pounding passion flooding you through. You should be treasured like a ruby or a diamond. You should be loved in the way I love you. All through the years I've held oceans inside, held back the tears and the waves and the tide. The dam had to burst and the currents collide with a flood of emotion I can no longer hold. We should be close as stars are to heaven, shoreline to ocean, birds to the blue. We should be coupled with a lifetime connection. We should be joined like we're one and not two. Yes, you should be loved in the way I love you. Violet says, Jake, of course we love each other like a brother and sister, friends to the end. Haven't you heard what I'm saying? I am in love with you. And then she says something and he says something, and he says, I don't care about them, only you. With love we could rise above the whispers and stares. We could challenge the powers of fate, make the best of a bad circumstance. You give me a chance. You should be loved by someone who wants you, tries to protect you, always comes through. You should have chosen the one who supports you, always supports you, whatever you do. Yes, you should be loved in the way I love you. I like that one.
Not only am I a big fan of Henry's music, but I'm a big fan of his singing. I love hearing him sing our songs.
Thank you.
It's very emotional, and you don't get that so much in contemporary musical theater. It tends to be more ironic or distanced, and Bill Condon often says, our director, that this musical wears its heart on its sleeve, and it does. And luckily, a lot of people seem to identify with those emotions. And
in real life, people aren't allowed to be emotional generally day to day. and yet they are very emotional under the surface. And so for them to have tactile, immediate ability to feel and identify with the emotionality of our songs, which are very accessible that way, is liberating for them.
I Will Never Leave You does have an interesting story behind it, because originally the first draft of the show, we thought the twins would be portrayed as 8-year-olds for the first part of the first act. And I Will Never Leave You was meant to be a lullaby that these 8-year-old girls sang to each other to comfort each other, because they were being taken to these doctors who threatened to cut them apart. Well, as the show progressed, we realized the logistics of having 8-year-old conjoined twins. Because of labor laws, there would have to be 2 sets of them and then another set of understudies, and that would involve a child wrangler. So we gave up the idea of them being little girls. And I said, well, we've got to cut that. We've got to cut I Will Never Leave You. And David Chase was our musical director and arranger, said, you can't cut that song. We changed it to be their 11 o'clock number and wrote
Which it
is now still, and wrote an intro into it that suggested they were looking back on their childhood. I was never completely satisfied with it because the lyric is intentionally very simple because they were young girls. But now in the show, we have a flashback sequence in Act 1 where they are taken to these doctors who threaten to cut them apart, and a chorus of I Will Never Leave You is established at that time, which I think really resonates later. And also there's now a whole plot point in Act 2 which really makes this song have more meaning, I feel, when they do sing it as their 11 o'clock number. And it goes a little something like this.
If we stood on our tiptoes, we could peek over the sill, and once in a while we would see a girl slowly walking up the hill, and we'd think what a sad situation to be outside on your own, to go through the day with no playmate, to go through life all alone. I will never leave you, I will never go away. We were meant to share each moment, beside you is where I will stay, evermore and always. We'll be one though we're two, for I will never leave you. When the day is filled with shadows that stretch into the night, I am filled with your sweet comfort, like morning fills with light. I will never leave you, I will never go away. We were meant to share each moment, beside you is where I will stay, evermore and always. We'll be one though we're two, for I will never leave you, I will never leave you, I will never go away. We were meant to share each moment, beside you is where I will stay, that's where I will stay, evermore and always. We'll be one though we're two, I will never, I will